Welcome to the CPM Customer Success Podcast, where we help Office of Finance executives deploy OneStream to transform their financial systems and processes so they can improve their corporate performance without late nights and weekends in the office. I'm your host, Andy Smetana, Nova Advisory's Chief Revenue Officer. Nova Advisory is a 100% OneStream professional services implementation partner. We help OneStream customers get the most of their OneStream investment. Today, we share the second half of our manufacturing-focused spotlight for Office of Finance executives. In this segment, we spotlight Dave Collins, OneStream's Director of Solutions Consulting and Global Alliances, as he dives deeper into OneStream's unique advantages for manufacturing finance. So if you manage a business which produces goods or services, are challenged by today's global disruptions, including supply chain and pricing pressures, you want to pay close attention to the second of a two-part series focused on how OneStream can provide information to improve the performance of your manufacturing business. If you missed part one, I'll recommend you go back and listen to episode 7 first. Let's get started with this episode. So as our next step, let's turn it over to Dave Collins. Dave's here from OneStream Software, and he'll be able to provide us some examples of OneStream put in use for manufacturing finance team.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Collins. I'm a director of solutions for OneStream. I work with our partner community, great partners like Nova and others around the world, to facilitate sessions like this and to educate the partners and you all on the value of OneStream from a leadership perspective. We are a leader from a Gartner standpoint in two areas of performance management or corporate performance management. Gartner looks at things fairly simply. We look at it on a more extended or expanded level. Their focus really is on the two facets of financial planning and financial close and consolidation. I'll give you a bit of an overview of both of those when I go in. And these align to two of the things that Andy talked about early on before he mentioned operational analytics. Now, our customers, by the way, we have more than now, I think, 1,430 customers worldwide. When I joined 4 years ago, we had around 550 customers. So we've experienced a tremendous amount of growth. We thank our customers and our partners for that growth. And our customers tend to replace multiple functional components within performance management, like close consolidation, account reconciliations, transaction matching if you're on that side of the Office of Finance, or many different FP&A activities, be it financial or operational on the FP&A side. They also tend to replace multiple vendors' products. So there's a lot of vendors that we compare to in the market. You've got the Oracles and the IBMs and the SAPs and the Anaplans and many others that are out there. And we not only compare very favorably from an analyst point of view, but we win our fair share in the compare contrast or the bake-off, if you will, as customers are evaluating what to do next. Now, a little bit of backdrop. The reason why OneStream is we saw an opportunity to improve upon performance management. And so did the Accentures, the PwCs, and others of the world when looking at progress made or lack thereof in the Office of Finance over the years. There was a study done, or a series of studies done, that I'm showing on screen right now, talking about the time it takes to gather data. That used to be the old 80-20 rule. Now it's just apparently the 66-34 rule. I'll talk about OneStream improvements on that in just a moment. At the top, 20% of organizations are able to leverage macroeconomic or external data in forecasts. I'll talk about that in detail as well. And then 86% of analytics efforts are missing the mark. I'll talk a bit about data science and the application of data science or machine learning to make things more automated, faster, more accurate here in just a few minutes. OneStream felt, when we created OneStream, if you will, some 13 years ago, we felt that there was a curve, a maturity curve that was left untapped. At the far left-hand side, financial performance management, that's the typical, where we're not getting into operational levels of detail. We tend to be looking at periodic data starting at month, going to quarter, going to year, not getting into week, not getting into day. With OneStream customers, we're seeing much more operational capability. We're also seeing a lot of AI-driven forecasting capability, which is creating a lot of automation and a lot of speed and accuracy in many different facets. Really good customer story, BDO are using us for the typical performance management around close consolidation, reporting, analytics, management reporting, operational reporting. But on the right there for benefits, they were a very early adopter of our analytics services capability within the platform, and they're loading in millions of records on an evening by evening basis so that they can see how the projects are going by customer. That is atypical for performance management, and yet for BDO, it is performance management. How well are we performing for our customers is a huge consideration. They want to get out ahead of those things. In typical performance management, you would find out at the end of the month, and then at the end of the quarter and the end of the year. But at the end of the month would be typically where you'd see it first, or you'd go and get an analytics solution and pair that with your performance management solution. Additionally, performance management tends to be very siloed or fragmented. You're going to have multiple modules to do things like lease accounting, account reconciliation, tax provisioning, and all of the FP&A activities that you see there on screen as well. The challenge with that is that you have to integrate. And the challenge with having to do that integration is that you experience a lot of what is now referred to as technical debt. I simply call it work. Work takes time, it takes effort, and it takes money to achieve. And when I was in consulting, delivering performance management solutions, I spent a lot of time doing data integration across all of these modules to make everything come together. OneStream brings it all together with one user license or user by user. That license enables a customer, that consumer, to do literally everything that is defined as performance management to them. At BDO, it's one license to do close consolidation, FP&A activities, and the ability to do analytics down to that level depth that they're doing. Our new view of this is that we're providing a digital finance cloud that is bringing together finance and operations. So the lines are blurred, and we're powering that with a series of platform services, inclusive AI services. And customers like Lego, who focused initially on operations, have modernized their FP&A process, integrating all planning across all of their profit centers down to a very deep level of detail, and brought in capital planning, salary planning, and ESG planning. And reporting, of course, as well. But ESG planning is a huge area for a lot of our customers, especially those in Europe. They're now starting to leverage sensible machine learning or sensible ML to do much more of a predictive plan as opposed to a heavily biased-based plan. Our customers, generally speaking, have improved on that 80-20, now 66-34 rule. Data management improvement is 72% plus, reporting improvement 75% plus, close consolidation improvement 54% plus. And from a planning standpoint, one customer talked about simplifying the workflow, consolidating all of their plan process together and cutting 60 days on the budget process, removing 24% of the time spent on the budget so that they could perhaps go through more iterations of the budget process more quickly. When it comes to forecast, we're seeing customers move from weeks to hours so that they can go about the task of analyzing what they're finding as opposed to just ticking the box and saying, okay, I've done it. Now, one of the ways we're able to unify several different facets of performance management together is referred to as extensibility or extensible dimensionality. I'm going to show an example of this by way of the PowerPoint slides to try to bring this home. Corporate is going to have its view of what's going on. And if you look at it from an actuals perspective and look at it on a revenue standpoint, I might have a consolidation of product and services and other and adjustments to revenue. Whereas an equipment group that's doing manufacturing, they have that, but from a budget standpoint, they may need to go deeper so that they can have a much better grain of detail for product revenue in this case, looking at wholesale, e-commerce, direct, component, and intercompany. And when it comes to the motors group that has a lot of intercompany activity as well, to equipment, for example, they too look at revenue in the same way as corporate and equipment, but they look at product revenue differently than the other two. And the challenge in most performance management solutions is that you'd build a module or an application for corporate and one for equipment and one for motors. And now I'm in that spaghetti slide that I showed a few slides ago, where I have to do integration between each of these different applications or modules. And with OneStream, it's all together in one application. Now, without getting into all the details of that in the time we have, it's there, it's leveraged by our customers, and it is, from my standpoint, the key differentiation versus us and the other vendors that we compare to. They're all very good at what they do. They've all been very good at what they do. We've progressed beyond one of the impediments seen with most of the vendors out there, and that is we've moved away from module and we've moved to a unified approach to performance management. We've also provided solutions in Solution Exchange. Andy mentioned this earlier. We used to call it Marketplace. Now Marketplace lies within Solution Exchange, and the Marketplace is where we put solutions that are built using the OneStream platform, or as we sometimes refer to, software using software. So we've built various planning solutions and other solutions as well. We have more than 70 solutions in Marketplace and OpenPlace. Think OpenPlace is like open source, if you will. And our partners are starting to create solutions as well, and they're putting them into an area of Solution Exchange called PartnerPlace. Now, as I bring this into more of a manufacturing light, where integrated business planning becomes key and critical, and I'll talk about a use case here in a minute, what we see with our customers is a highly fragmented, disconnected way of doing portfolio and commercial and demand plan and supply chain planning. One of our GSI partners calls this the big cog, if you will, on the operational side versus the little cog on the financial side. The financial side is incredibly important. We need to be able to tie all of these together so that we can pay for it, so that we have line of sight for what might come down the road, like I have to, per demand, get more supplies so that my manufacturing process can actually go about manufacturing. From a benefit standpoint, it allows for alignment. So remove the disconnected nature of planning today and actually truly integrate it. Bring together financial and operational planning. Financialize, I'm not sure if that's a word or not, but marketing believes it is, the operational plans. Create a more collaborative approach to this and eliminate replication, because we have all of this sitting in one application. Providing a unique approach by way of our platform is really the key critical component here. So what does this look like from a customer standpoint? Well, Autoleave, a safety supplier in Europe, is doing all of this by way of the platform today. They started, much like BDO did, in other forms of the more summary performance management, but they're doing S&OP, they're doing financial close consolidation, reporting and analysis. Their case study is actually on onestream.com if you look under resources. In particular, from my standpoint, they're solving for a very simple problem. They are beholden to the forecast coming from their customer, and their customer would be the Fords, the Stellantises, the GMs, the Volvos of the world. In other words, the manufacturing companies that make those vehicles, if you will. They get a forecast from someone, say a Ford as an example, and Ford believes they're going to sell 100,000 units over the course of the next several months. Autoleave responds by creating 100,000 units of safety systems and then ship it to them. Well, what if they're wrong? What if Ford really wound up needing to build 125,000? Now I've missed an opportunity. I have to increase overtime so that I can build more and build them very quickly. I have to increase freight expense. Those are expenses I didn't plan for, And that's because the forecast coming from my customer was not as accurate as it could have been. And what if the opposite happens, where instead of 100,000 units, it's 80,000 units? Now suddenly I have a lot of supply sitting around that I can't leverage. At the end of the day, traditional forecasting, which is highly biased, highly opinion filled, is not very accurate. That intuitive approach is typically not right. It depends upon the person. What we're doing now in the platform is leveraging a solution out of Solution Exchange called Sensible Machine Learning, which I referred to a little bit before, that is allowing me now to work out what the actual drivers are. Essentially, what I'm doing is taking in data at various levels of detail, typically for something like this, all the way down to the day level, and I'm leveraging math to work out what that pattern happens to be. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to know math, and I'm showing some of the statistical algorithms on screen right now. And by the way, I was a stats major. I wasn't a business major or a finance major. I have a lot of them in my family. They claim that I'm much more boring than they are. I believe the opposite is actually true. Math and data is actually incredibly worthwhile. It allows me to see patterns, and if I can bring in data from the outside world, I can dimensionalize what happened and provide context so that I can predict it going forward. So as an example, looking at the day of the week, do we tend to sell more on a certain day of the week? If you look at weekends in the retail industry, that's certainly true. If you look at Black Friday, that's certainly true. But we're not talking about the events that we all know. What about events that are particular to a region, to an organization? What if I had the ability to put those events into the system and look at that contextually against my data to see if there's a pattern, and then take that pattern and project it forward so that I could see what might happen going forward? What if I was able to look at the weather? What if I was able to bring all of that together, look at sales versus prior year versus week of the year, look at precipitation, look at interest rates, look at unemployment? What if I had the ability to take all of that macroeconomic data, which I mentioned earlier, our customers didn't previously have the ability to leverage? What if I could leverage that together? Well, I'd be more accurate, I'd be more efficient, I'd be more transparent, I'd be more agile, and I'd be unifying all of this together, the functional, the technical, the operational, the financial together. And per Gartner, 54% of the time, pure play data science makes it to production, meaning that a good amount of the time it doesn't. And it takes a long time to actually put that in place. Whereas 100% of the time, our customers and our prospective customers that are doing a proof of value on sensible machine learning are eventually making it into production, because it's plugging in with a no-code, low-code approach, OneStream, leveraging that data and allowing us to create a much more accurate, much more agile forecast. So let's have a look at OneStream. I'm going to go into OneStream. Here is one imagination or vision of what OneStream's front end could look like. I say that because this is something built by our demo engineering team, whereas if I click on new, Nova can help you paint the picture that's appropriate for you. In our case, we have across the top a series of navigation capabilities. For example, I click on reporting, and much like Microsoft Office, in that ribbon-based approach, I can go to my financial, my operational, my ESG, my narrative reporting, my pillar 2-based reporting. I can also go into planning, consolidation, financial close, and I'll do that in just a moment. But you'll see across the bottom of the screen that I have the ability to go in and do some reporting against these KPIs. And as a user, I can actually decide or configure what my KPIs are going to look like, what the comparison might look like. And further, I can select any of these and find out more contextually what happened prior to the given month. And by the way, we're assuming that we just closed June of 2023, a bit of a history lesson. I can drill down on this data to find out more about what's going on, like return on assets is what to me? Well, it's actually defined as my net income divided by total assets. There's the calculation right there. If I look at that net income, I can see what each of those line items means by drilling down through them until I get down into my gross income, my revenues, my product revenue, and that means wholesale, e-commerce, and more, like I showed you a bit ago. And I can take this even further, should I choose to do, to go look at all of the data that was loaded in from the source system. Now, we're actually loading in all of that transaction level of detail from the source system because it's useful. When I go into my operational dashboards, I can look at that data on a summary basis or specific to customer and product by just clicking. If I, for example, maximize my customer order details, I have every order for 2023, thousands and thousands and thousands of orders at the ready, available to me so that I can see what's going on and what happened and what drove perhaps a particular behavior or a particular outcome. In my customer scatter, if I wanted to drill down on my central region and see the detail and look for those outliers, as I'm seeing here, I can then go and have a look at perhaps why I have these outliers. For example, if I choose Illinois, I can see that I've got some discount percentages that are much higher than my benchmark of 18%. And I can see that I'm actually giving quite a hefty discount, in particular to Bullseye and Craig's Golf Town and more. Now, I should have said early on that this model is a unified view of a fictitious company called Gulfstream. Little play on words. It's a manufacturer of golf products. We service golf courses, and we want to be able to do everything in this application. I want to be able to do reporting in this application. I want to be able to do planning, budgeting, forecasting in this application. So if I go back to my home screen, I may wish to look at my financial close process. I may wish to go into my task management or account reconciliations, transaction matching. We offer that as a solution, or those facets of performance management as solutions as well. Simply go to the solution exchange, download them, plug them into your application, and off you go, rather than purchase perhaps a very costly solution from another vendor. Now, task management is a great way for us to visualize what needs to get done, whether it's my financial close process or my budget process. And you'll notice that I have different things to do. Now, we're not presupposing as the software vendor that we're going to map what you need to do. Rather, you're going to work with Nova. They're going to advise you on best practice or leading practice for the types of things that you need to do. And then we're going to provide the ability for you to execute flawlessly. I can see that I've already uploaded my FX rates. I can see that the last step was automatically loading in my ERP import. And if I go to that step in particular, I'm dropped off in the workflow for the first part of my close consolidation. I would work through each of these steps either on an automated basis or on a push button basis. And at the end of the process, I can look at the entirety of close. In this case, for June of 2023, again, assuming that we just closed out June, I can look at my financial results. I can do my analysis of variance. I can look at my intercompany activity. I can get all the way down to the transaction matching from entity to entity inside of the organization, all within a single application, without that fragmentation and multi-module approach that we see with other vendors. Now, when it comes to planning and budgeting and forecasting, which is one of the focus items of this session, we have all of that available to us. We have different forms of planning available to us, and those solutions that are found in Solution Exchange for workforce, for capital, for cash can all be plugged into this application. Now, typically an organization will start with a strategic plan, kind of the back of the envelope, if you will, where I have, or I'm showing right now, the overview for entity by entity, what that strategic plan looks like. We may not be looking at this from a product or a customer perspective. We're simply trying to work out what our net sales looks like, what cost of sales and gross income would look like. I'd want to do this quickly, and therefore I'd want to be able to use drivers, and I'd want to have different methodologies for those drivers. For example, percent of total revenue, percent of product revenue. Speaking of revenue, I'd want to do a revenue process a cost of goods process, and then eventually allow for the user to look at an income statement and a balance sheet and a cash flow, and then make decisions about changes that need to take place in that overall strategic plan year by year by year, and then eventually seed my target. Think of that as a version of the budget that I'm constantly comparing myself to. Now, when I seed the target, I'm actually taking that baseline figure, which is not by product, not by customer, and driving it down on an allocation basis so that I can do comparisons later. And of course, what ifing is always something that is possible within OneStream for the entire enterprise. Now, if I back up a couple of steps, I want to talk about how we can leverage from a forecast perspective. And there's the budgeting process, of course, that I'll do on an annual operational and financial basis. But from a forecast standpoint, the trend that we're seeing right now is moving away from the manual approach that, again, is highly biased to more of an automated and leveraging machine learning approach. So as an example, right now I'm looking at the overview, much like my strategic plan and the budget, which I haven't shown you. I have assumptions, I have different forms of planning that I'm going to do for the forecast process here. I might want to do a scenario analysis. You're going to see an example of that extensibility in play. For example, for actuals, we have lots of detail by customer. We have that same detail by product and by regional location. But when I look at my budget, my forecast, my strategic baseline or strategic plan, we up level. We're not going to the region by region level when it comes to my strat plan. We're not going to that same level for customer. For product, we might focus in on some of the strategic customer, or rather products. But again, the level depth of detail that we can store in that same application can vary function by function by function. When I go back to my forecast review, oh, and by the way, from a workflow standpoint, forecast status, who's in, who's not. And as the forecasters are entering in this case, their FP&A activity, they can put in commentary all in the same application. And that, of course, is available through the financial close and consolidation process as well. Now, when I look at revenue, the thing, again, getting back to what we're seeing from a trend standpoint, is instead of leveraging great tools to make changes to the forecast. So for example, for Big Mart, I may want to go off and highlight a number of data points, use some spreading capabilities to, for example, up level by a factor, say by 0.03, what we're seeing based upon what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing. That, again, has some level of bias. I may not have access to all of the information that I need to have access to. So instead, what I, as the user, can do is make a decision about leveraging sensible machine learning. Now, again, sensible machine learning is a solution that I plug in that is a no-code, low-code approach to leveraging artificial intelligence. It's going to look at your data at the operational transaction by transaction level of detail, and then allow you to bring in as much of that macroeconomic and calendar-based event data as you wish, so that you can allow that to guide you, at least from a starting perspective. So on screen, I'm looking at that one number. Forecast, plan, budget forecast tends to be at a summary level, whereas my actuals tend to be detailed. So what I'm doing here is leveraging the actuals from last year to generate a machine learning forecast by marrying that data with the macroeconomic indicators like CPI, like how much is the Fed charging for interest rates these days, unemployment rates, gas prices, whatever might be relevant. And I can influence now that forecast by leveraging, instead of the number that the human enters, I can actually leverage the data that's calculated by the engine. Now, why is this of benefit? Well, it's leveraging, again, that external data. We call them features, and I have full transparency on which of those features have the most importance and are being leveraged as it creates that ML forecast for me. Now, all I would have to do at this stage is copy my ML forecast. I'm not going to do that at this point. And it would quickly and easily drop that new data into my forecast. And then, of course, I could go ahead and make changes to it. For example, I may be aware of an event, a promotion that's going to occur in the next couple of months that has not yet been brought into Sensible Machine Learning. I didn't see it on the list there. And so I can now influence it. Now, what does this mean for your FP&A process? Again, much more accuracy, much more speed. We have one customer in particular, a very large customer in the retail space, that talked to us about their 6-7 week quarterly forecast process. We did a proof of value with Sensible Machine Learning. They're already a OneStream customer. They were using OneStream, and they had improved upon their forecast process from when they were using another vendor's solution. With Sensible Machine Learning, they moved into a less than 6-hour approach to that forecast. And then that allows the human FP&A folks to go in and start to make changes to it, start to do greater analysis against it. So with that said, I'm going to jump to our summary slide and throw it back to Andy to finish out the session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate it. So as we summarize in how OneStream empowers predictive manufacturing finance, the strategic planning and forecasting capabilities we've talked about. So as you look in your manufacturing operations to perhaps shift product manufacturing locations to different geographies, OneStream enables that decision making to allow you to deal with those market changes we talked about, those labor shortages, those supply chain disruptions. OneStream's unified financial operations, unified platform with actuals, budgets, variance analysis, the backward looking, the forward looking, the looking at what happens today. That unified platform will allow you to eliminate the need for disparate systems and modules. OneStream's close and consolidation solution. Every company needs to close their books. OneStream is best in class at this. It will allow you to provide the financial reporting, the statutory reporting in each of your different geographic locations, all in one place. And the advanced reporting and dashboards we've talked about and seen today, those capabilities will give the real-time insights, those operational analytics, to allow you to adapt your business, analyze the financial and operational performance. Thanks for listening to the CPM Customer Success Podcast. I love listening to Dave Collins speak about how today's manufacturing finance executives can improve their company's financial performance with OneStream. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, please subscribe or follow so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the CPM Customer Success Podcast.